Millionaire regrets judging his arranged bride, her transformation left him speechless. Welcome to Wise Stories. Please do remember to subscribe, like and share this video. Ethan Carter sat in his sleek, modern office, the floor-to-ceiling windows framing a stunning view of the bustling city below. His tailored suit fit perfectly, as always, every detail a testament to his meticulous nature. But despite the luxury around him, his jaw clenched in irritation. He hated the idea of an arranged marriage, but family loyalty left him no choice. His father had made it clear, this union would solidify a crucial business alliance, one that could take their company to new heights. A soft knock on the door broke his thoughts. "Mr. Carter, your fiancée has arrived," his assistant informed him. "Send her in," Ethan replied flatly, adjusting his cufflinks without enthusiasm. He had already judged this meeting as a mere formality. The door opened, and Lila Bennett stepped in. She was petite, with simple brown hair pinned neatly at the back of her head. Her dress was modest, pale blue, and elegant but understated, completely opposite to the glamorous women Ethan was used to. No expensive jewelry sparkled on her neck, no designer handbag was clutched in her hand. "Mr. Carter," she greeted softly, extending a hand. Her voice was calm and clear. "Lila," Ethan replied, shaking her hand with polite indifference. "Please, have a seat." They sat across from each other, the air heavy with unspoken tension. Ethan's gaze remained impassive, taking in her quiet demeanor and lack of extravagance. "Thank you for coming," he said stiffly. "I assume you're aware of why this meeting is happening." Lila folded her hands neatly in her lap. "Yes, to discuss our engagement," she said matter-of-factly, meeting his gaze without hesitation. Ethan nodded. "This is a business arrangement more than anything else. I want to be upfront, I don't believe in forcing emotions into something purely practical." His tone was formal, distant. Lila smiled gently but did not flinch at his cold words. "Honesty is important," she agreed, her calm demeanor unwavering. "But I hope practicality doesn't have to mean a lack of mutual respect." Her response caught Ethan off guard for a moment, but he quickly masked his surprise. "Of course," he replied coolly. "Respect is essential." The conversation continued with polite, measured words, but Ethan remained detached, unable to see beyond the simplicity of Lila's appearance. In his mind, she was plain, nothing special. Yet as they spoke, there was something in Lila's steady gaze and thoughtful responses that hinted at a depth Ethan had yet to understand. But for now, his judgment stood firm, she was not what he had expected, or wanted. The grand hall was decorated with shimmering crystal chandeliers and cascading white roses, every detail meticulously planned to perfection. The Carter family had spared no expense for the wedding of their heir, Ethan Carter, to Lila Bennett. Guests in designer gowns and tailored suits mingled, their whispers blending with the soft music in the background. "Why her?" a woman murmured to her companion, glancing toward the bride standing at the altar. "She's so plain." "I heard it's all for business," the other replied. "Look at him, he doesn't seem happy." Ethan stood rigid in his tailored tuxedo, his expression unreadable. His sharp jawline and cool demeanor exuded authority, but there was no warmth in his gaze as he glanced at Lila. To him, this was a duty, a deal he had reluctantly agreed to fulfill. Lila, in contrast, stood poised and graceful in a simple yet elegant ivory gown that flowed softly around her. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, a few delicate curls framing her face. Though there was no elaborate jewelry or dramatic flair in her appearance, there was an air of quiet confidence about her. "You look beautiful," whispered her maid of honor as they prepared to exchange vows. "Thank you," Lila responded softly, her serene smile never wavering. The priest cleared his throat, signaling the ceremony was about to begin. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today," his voice echoed through the hall, but Ethan barely heard the words. His mind was elsewhere, focused on the constraints of a marriage he hadn't truly wanted. "Do you, Ethan Carter, take Lila Bennett to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Ethan's jaw tightened ever so slightly, but he nodded firmly. "I do." "And do you, Lila Bennett, take Ethan Carter to be your lawfully wedded husband?" I do, Lila replied, her voice clear and unwavering. As they exchanged rings, the weight of the moment pressed heavily on Ethan's shoulders. The guests continued to murmur quietly, some disapproving, others curious about how this union would unfold. Smile, Ethan, his father whispered from the front row, urging him to show some semblance of joy. Ethan forced a polite smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. Lila, however, remained serene, unaffected by the judging eyes around her. She held her head high, a quiet determination shining beneath her composed exterior. By the power vested in me, the priest declared, I now pronounce you husband and wife. The applause was polite but lacked enthusiasm, reflecting the guests' doubt about the mismatched couple. Yet as they walked down the aisle together, Lila's calm demeanor hinted at something Ethan had yet to discover, a hidden strength waiting to reveal itself. Ethan Carter sat at the head of the long boardroom table, his sharp gaze fixed on the group of executives in front of him. The tension in the room was palpable. A critical business deal with an international partner was hanging by a thread. The negotiations had stalled over pricing disagreements, and tempers were fraying. This isn't going anywhere, one executive muttered. Ethan was about to speak when Lila, seated quietly to his right, leaned forward. May I offer a suggestion? She asked, her tone calm but confident. Several heads turned, some surprised by her presence. Ethan had brought Lila to the meeting reluctantly, assuming her involvement would be minimal. Now, all eyes were on her. Go ahead, Ethan said carefully, his curiosity piqued despite himself. Lila folded her hands neatly on the table. The problem lies in misaligned expectations. Our partners want pricing stability, while we seek flexibility to protect against market shifts. Her voice was steady, each word deliberate. What if we establish a sliding scale based on production costs? This way, they have predictability, and we maintain adaptability. A murmur spread through the room as the executives considered her idea. One of the international representatives raised an eyebrow. A sliding scale? That's unconventional. Unconventional doesn't mean ineffective, Lila responded smoothly. In fact, it aligns our interests more closely than rigid pricing ever could. Both sides share the risk, but also the reward. Ethan watched in silence, his expression unreadable. He had always underestimated Lila, seeing her as a mere formality in his life. But now, as she navigated the negotiation with grace and intelligence, he saw a side of her he hadn't bothered to notice before. That's actually a brilliant compromise, another executive admitted. It's fair and forward-thinking. I agree, the international partner nodded. We can draft terms around this concept. Ethan leaned back in his chair, processing the scene before him. Lila had effortlessly turned a deadlocked discussion into a successful negotiation. His respect for her grew as he realized the depth of her insight and composure. As the meeting concluded and the deal was sealed, Ethan found himself genuinely impressed. Lila, he said as the room began to clear, where did you learn to handle negotiations like that? She smiled softly. Let's just say I've learned a lot from observing and thinking before speaking. Ethan chuckled, a rare warmth in his voice. Well, you certainly showed me something today. For the first time, he saw her not just as his wife but as a partner worthy of admiration. His perspective had shifted, sparking a respect that was long overdue. The evening gala was in full swing, glittering lights reflecting off the crystal chandeliers overhead. The city's most influential figures mingled, sipping champagne and exchanging polite conversations. Ethan Carter stood by the entrance, scanning the room. As CEO of Carter Enterprises, his presence commanded respect. Yet tonight, all eyes seemed drawn to someone else, the woman entering by his side. Lila Carter, dressed in a sleek emerald gown that highlighted her graceful figure, moved through the room with quiet confidence. Her once modest demeanor had evolved into poise and elegance, though her kindness remained unchanged. Whispers floated among the crowd. Is that really Lila? A guest murmured in disbelief. She looks incredible, another remarked. Who knew she had such presence? Ethan couldn't help but smile to himself. He had once judged her by appearances and dismissed her as ordinary. But over time, Lila had revealed layers of intelligence, charm, and strength that he hadn't anticipated. Watching her tonight, effortlessly commanding admiration, he realized just how wrong he had been. As they moved through the crowd, Ethan leaned toward her. "You're stealing the spotlight tonight," he said with a teasing smile. Lila chuckled softly. "I thought you were used to being the center of attention." "Not anymore, it seems," he replied warmly. Later in the evening, a prominent investor approached them. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "I have to commend you on your recent business strategy. Your approach was brilliant." "Thank you," Lila replied graciously. "It was a team effort." "Don't be modest," Ethan interjected proudly. "You've been a key part of our success." As the investor walked away, Lila turned to Ethan. "You didn't have to say that." "But it's true," he insisted. "You've proven yourself in every way, not just to the company but to me." He paused, his voice softer now. "I judged you unfairly at first. I thought this marriage was just business, but you've made it so much more." Lila met his gaze, her eyes reflecting warmth and understanding. "It took time, but we've both grown from this. And I'm glad we did." Ethan took her hand, squeezing it gently. "I love you, Lila. Not for what you've become, but for who you've always been." A soft smile spread across her face. "And I love you, Ethan." The room around them faded as they stood together, stronger and closer than ever. What had begun as a reluctant arrangement had blossomed into a true partnership built on respect, admiration, and love, proving every doubter wrong.